Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today it's all about the rookies in redraft. That's right. We're going to tell you about the rookies, the values of the guys that we think are going to smash, the guys who could emerge, and the guys who could be busts. Also, there may be a few who might shock the world. Who are these names, and who do you need to draft? We're going to tell you right here on the program today, and to help us do it, of course, is D-Bro, Derek Brown, the King of Bros, who took a break from one of his 12 rookie drafts just to do this show today. And, of course, back from the United Kingdom, Brett Kollmann is ready to go. He literally bought all of the bottles behind him in the last month when he was out there hanging out, getting back home to the homeland. Brett Kollmann, of course, the man behind the film room on YouTube. Brett, it's great to have you. Now, you're even a bigger lunatic than us because you did Saturday of the draft live as well. So how you holding up there, buddy?
I brought all those bottles back for a reason. So we get through the draft, boys. We did a 5-hour stream day one. I think we did a 5 or 6 hour stream day two, and then we did an 8-hour stream on day three. So man. It was fun. Got to live react to all the the day three running backs that we're gonna have an irrational amount of love for the next few months. But it was good. It was a good weekend. Also, by the way, to you guys. Happy Who's This Year's Puka Nacua week to you, because I'm sure you've gotten that many questions about it.
No, we're going to do that later in the show.
You know my text messages or DMs. I mean, basically that's all I've gotten all week. And I'm not kidding. Like it's happened a lot, man.
Derek Brown, I have an irrational love for you. When we're looking at this rookie class here and the dust settling, I'm excited about it. And to Brett's point too, I think the irrational love of the late running backs here is going to be something that I know all draft season. We already touched on it in the last show we did with Thor. We were talking about some of these guys that I'm going to look to draft later. I think that's going to be a running theme here with this class, and it feels like there's going to be opportunities. But once again, I think we have to practice patience with a lot of these guys, especially the running backs, because that's what the NFL has told us the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that looking at all these guys, it's going to be patience, and whether it's waiting for just the cream to rise to the top, that's really what we got to do. It's just a lot of patience and a lot of waiting, but it's still going to pay off, dude.
Ooh, yeah, that's what you got to do. You get the running
Here
backs.
Here
we go.
Yeah.
That's a good Randy Savage.
Don't tell him that, Brett. Now he's going to do it for the rest of the show. See, this is the problem.
Draft the running backs. Yeah. All right, let's get after it. Let's begin today with a big conversation about the stars in the rookie class, the guys who are going to smash in 2024 redraft leagues. And let's start with the wide receivers at the top of this class. Brett, Marvin Harrison Jr., generational sort of talent that everybody has been in on for many years. We're talking about the Hall of Fame bloodlines. We're talking about all the opportunity for targets too in this offense with the Cardinals. So between him and Malik Nabers with the Giants, who also does not exactly have a lot of competition in New York, let's take these two guys one at a time. How excited are you for both of them? And what are your expectations, more importantly? Because Kyler Murray is one thing. Daniel Jones is another one. I think a little bit more of an unknown when it comes to the passing acumen at the NFL level, because frankly, we just haven't seen it to a high degree. So let's start with Harrison first. Your thoughts on him and what you might project him for in 2024.
He's a true number one. Like out of the box, a true number one. He's got virtually every single trait you could want. Size, speed, burst, route running acumen, unreal hands. He's an artist on the sidelines. There was really only 2 legitimate choices for the Cardinals there, is either Joe Alt or Marvin Harrison Jr. They could have gone either way, and I think it would have been a good pick. But ultimately, they felt that after taking Paris last year, their offensive line was in a decent spot. They could afford, quote unquote, to take a receiver as good as Marvin, and he fills a hole that quite frankly was pretty big on that roster, and specifically for Kyler. If you go back to D-Hop when he was there, the offense really only functioned when they had a guy who, when all else fails, when they're doing all that 3x1 gun stuff, when D-Hop was on the backside and it was 3rd and 7 and we just need a first down, DeAndre, go beat that guy. Like, their offense really only functioned when they had that element, because they would they would get behind the chains quite frequently. They would do Cardinals things and end up in third and forever. And they could always rely on D-Hop and Kyler to just kind of like bail them out and get back on track and then start, doing all the James Conner stuff. But when D-Hop was gone, they did not have that element, whether through suspension or just not being on the team. They didn't have that element. They completely fell apart, healthy Kyler or not. So I think Marvin gives them that, like a true X receiver that when the chips are down, they could just count on him to get the offense back on track. That is what his role is going to be. And it's honestly what number one receivers do, which is if you don't have a favorable look, you're in a bad situation. They can be, the force multiplier, the great equalizer. That is what Marvin is. So I don't know where his ADP is right now, currently in Dynasty
on
rookie
Fantasy
drafts.
Pros right now in redraft leagues, he is at number 9 overall wide receiver. Is that too high for you, or is that about right?
Just in redraft?
Just in redraft. It's very aggressive, Brett. Just to give you a sense of,
I feel like we're not getting value on it. It's like he might end up as the wide receiver 9 on the year, but there's so many other rookies where it's like if we're trying to gamify this and like get somebody who's at a value, like I feel like Marvin's greatness is already being priced in, whereas there's some other guys that aren't already.
D-Bro, but when you consider the group around him too, Marvin Harrison at 9 right now. Again, this is currently as we're recording this. Brandon Ayuk at 10. Still questions about where he might end up possibly. Devontae Adams at 11. Chris Olave at 12. Then you have Evans, London, Samuel, and Pittman. Maybe this isn't so far off.
No, and it's funny that, I'm hand-holding with consensus. Maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid too, but I have him at wide receiver 9. I updated my ranks last night. He is my wide receiver 9, and it all comes back to volume, boys. We talk about volume is king. That's what we want to garner. Even if you look at Arizona last year, and we've talked about this on previous shows, they threw the ball 555 freaking times last year. They were 25th in neutral passing rate. Like, those numbers are going to go up with a healthy Kyler Murray and now with Marvin Harrison Jr. in this offense. So even at the 550 mark, if we think Marv is that kind of guy, a 25% target share, that's going to put him, or at least projecting it, 137 targets. That's 13th amongst all guys at wide receiver last year. So, and honestly, would any of us be shocked if he gets a 26%, a 27% target share? Because this passing attack is going to run through Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, and both of them are going to eat. So I'm not worried about either one of these guys for volume. I think we can quibble about where Marvin Harrison Jr. falls in the wide receiver 1 conversation, but I think he is a locked-in wide receiver 1. And to Brett's point, yes, the next guy we're going to talk about here, Malik Nabers, I think that we could get better value on him in redraft than we're getting on Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right, so let's go back to Brett about Malik Nabers. Again, the question I posed to you before is, we love the player. We love certainly the lack of competition, but at the same time, do we trust Daniel Jones, Brett?
So I want people to stick with me as I say this. I had Malik Nabers as wide receiver 3 in this class, and honestly, you could have argued 4. But I think what he does, like his specific skill set, is actually kind of tailored pretty well for the Giants. So my overall evaluation of him doesn't matter as much as what's his role going to be in New York, right? I saw him as more of a slot receiver than an outside guy. I thought he kind of struggled with press man coverage on the outside. If you look at the Bama game, you look at the Florida State game, he did most of his best work inside, not outside. That being said, even if his best route is a slot fade that LSU ran with him over and over and over again to the point where the majority of his production came on slot fades and like hitches, if you're projecting that type of role to the Giants, guess what? That's what he's going to do for them too. And I'll tell you why. A slot fade, like that type of throw, is, especially when you have a receiver like Malik Nabers, it's pretty much an automatic, like, this is what we're throwing when we get a single high safety presentation pre-snap. Like, if we have Malik Nabers to the field side in the slot, ton of space to work with, single high safety, unless the DB is leveraged way the hell outside, we are throwing that route to the point where it doesn't even matter what the play call is. Daniel's going to look over and just glance at Malik and say, do your thing. That's what Jayden did with him, right? It works because he's so bursty and he's so explosive and he's got great ball skills. We worry about, can the Giants throw deep with Daniel Jones because protection's bad and, maybe he's not the best quarterback. He could throw a slot fade. And also, in regards to the protection thing, slot fade is the type of throw that comes out in under 2.5 seconds anyway. So the protection, it doesn't even need to be good. It just needs to be like a traffic cone, like just get in the way. So even if all of Malik Nabers' production for the second year in a row, college and pros, coming off of that particular route, tell you what, 1,200 yards is 1,200 yards, boys. Like, I'll take it any way I can get it. So even if that's the one thing he does, he's really good at it, and they need somebody who can do that. So, is he the best receiver in this class? To me, no. I know some people had him as wide receiver 1, but is he going to be any less productive than anybody else? Also, no.
All right, Debro, right now he's currently going off the board, or should I say theoretically being ranked as wide receiver 25. Now, that's ahead of T. Higgins, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, and Christian Kirk, and also Keenan Allen. Allen and certainly Kirk, I know, are two guys we have our eye on too, especially Kirk in his situation this year. So does that make sense to you, or is that a little too aggressive on Nabers in redraft?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the conversation for Nabers starts at the low end wide receiver 2 territory. Like, in that grouping, you can make a case for a lot of guys. I mean, just looking at offenses, looking at volume and things like that. And to Brett's point, I think Nabers is going to eat. And whether you project him to play outside or play in the slot, I think we could see a lot of the similar type of usage that CeeDee Lamb garnered early in his career. A lot of slot usage, a lot of here's layups. Like, if it's not what Brett's talking about, slot fades, hit him on crossers. Make it easy for Daniel Jones. Like, get the ball out of his freaking hands and let Nabers, who is one of the best guys in this in class and now in the NFL, after the catch, immediately, his quick twitch, his ability to break tackles at that size is fantastic. So either way that you slice this, he can garner similar type of volume that Marvin Harrison Jr. could see in Arizona and easy layup looks. I love it, man. I think that if anybody's looking at him as a wide receiver 3, he could smash that type of ADP with just volume alone. And the stink of the situation, I think, is what is depressing that.
It seems like Trey Benson is in a spot with Arizona where he could smash too. James Conner was the guy ahead of him. So in your opinion, Debro, when you're looking at this opportunity, maybe Benson wasn't your number 1 running back on the board, but considering he's healthy right now, considering what the opportunity looks like, and an offense now that's going to have Harrison, is going to have McBride and Kyler Murray and look a little bit different than it did last year because of who's running the show nowadays there, do you think that possibly that Benson might be one of these guys too that just can smash a little sooner than we realize?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's two-part for me with that. I think you're looking at, again, the overall offensive complexion. You're marrying that with the age and health of James Conner. And I don't want to say that we need to be putting James Conner out to pasture. He arguably had his most effective season in the NFL on a per-touch basis last year. So I don't think, unlike somebody like, say, Josh Jacobs and other players in the league, I'm not worried about James Conner. I think he has plenty of gas left in the tank. But the skill set of Trey Benson, the first thing that people are going to talk about, and it's the right thing to talk about or lead the conversation off with him, is that home run ability. I've looked at him from day one as a runway back, as a guy that if you get him in space, the 4-3 wheels take over and he can hit freaking dingers. And the reason that comes into play and why we got to lead off with that is, okay, well, we're worried about the volume. What does the volume look like for Trey Benson in Arizona in year 1 with James Conner also there? And Kyler Murray is going to take away some of the rushing himself. So what do we need out of Trey Benson? If you're going to get 8 to 12 touches on a weekly basis, I need the ability out of you to take one of those to the house, to break off a 30-yard run, a 40-yard run, and really to pad your stat line with your home run ability. Trey Benson can do that, and if you add also into the equation the ability that Kyler Murray has with his legs and the headaches that's going to cause for defenses, because we see this all throughout the NFL. You add the mobility of the quarterback to the run game on the ground, the efficiency is going to go up. Trey Benson could smash at his, even with the volume expectations that I have for him this year. If you add in also the injury risk for James Conner, dude, he could walk out of this year as like a top 12, top 15 back if Conner were to go down for a substantial amount of time.
Brett, we don't have to throw shade at Conner. We could just talk about the facts. He's 29. He's coming off a year where he had 208 attempts. So that being said is...
And he missed time last year too.
Well, and he missed time, and he has a history of missing time over his career. So, Brett, is Benson in a situation to smash with the Cardinals?
I think it's very plausible that when we look at the Cardinals offense, Benson's getting a lot of work in between the 20s because of his ability to rip off explosives, and then you bring in Connor as the closer. Very similar to like a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery situation from last year, which drove people insane until they realized that both were eating, and so who cares? You know, I mean, this time last year, I was screaming from the rafters like, Monty's the goal line guy. Like, don't expect a bunch of low red zone touches for Jahmyr Gibbs. And it took until like week 12 for them to really start giving, Gibbs carries inside the 5. So I can see a similar type of situation. It's interesting thing about Trey Benson and the Florida State offense was so weird because they lived in the gun just like the Cardinals do because that's Kyler's comfortable in the gun. But if you look at the run schemes that Florida State ran with Benson, they were at 34% counter, which means a third of their offense was running counter. The NFL average is 6%, which contributed a lot to the boom or bust nature of Benson because a quarter of his runs on counter, a full quarter would be explosive plays, and a full quarter would go for a loss because that's just what counter is. Either you hit it or you don't, right? And so it's going to be interesting to kind of see him in like a normal-ish offense where they're running more stuff than just like shotgun counter all day. We didn't get to see it a whole lot from him at Florida State, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have the talent to do it. I just really think that with his explosive ability, also as a receiver too, he's going to get a bunch of touches in between the 20s, and then people are going to be pulling their hair out because they're going to get to the 7-yard line. It's going to be James Conner time. So I hope that you're taking him higher in PPR than in standard, because if you're relying on touchdowns from him, again, could be till Thanksgiving till you get return on that.
Brett, give me those RPO looks, baby. I want Kyler to get out on the edge, flip it to Benson, and just
or it's a guy, Derek, that you end up trading for, in week 6 or 7, and then we've seen that too. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs. How many people were dying to trade Jahmyr Gibbs 6 weeks into the season last year? I mean, we took so many questions on that, and look how it ended up turning out in the end. And he was a guy that could win you a league, basically. I want to talk about the 2 quarterbacks here, Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels here. Brett, we'll start with you on this one. Right now, currently, I know this is probably more of a conversation for the Superflex formats. You got Caleb at QB 13. You got Daniels currently right now at QB 18. Who has the better chance, in your opinion, in 2024 to have the QB1 season in terms of he finishes as a top 10 or 12 quarterback?
Caleb, not even close. Like Caleb.
Okay.
He's just a straight up better quarterback by a pretty decent margin. And Caleb's better than everybody in this class by a pretty decent margin. I understand the running component that Jayden brings to the table. But that's not everything. And quite frankly, Jayden as a runner also, I mean, you put the end zone in the middle of the 405, he's going to run. It doesn't matter like how much damage that dude takes. He's going to run. And sometimes I get a little bit worried about his own preservation instincts. I'm like, dude, you can slide eventually. Like I promise you can. It's allowed. But even beyond like the mobility thing, which yes, adds some value to Jayden, I still think Caleb is going to massively outproduce him because he's better in the pocket. He's better out of the pocket. He's got better arm talent. He's more accurate. He's a better decision maker. He also has mobility himself too. It's not like he's anything but immobile. So is he going to run for as many yards as Jayden? Probably not. But is he going to make up for that and outproduce him and get more points, in the aggregate? If we're counting touchdowns, if we're counting just pure passing yardage, yeah, he definitely will. So to me, it's not even a discussion. Honestly, the real discussion is Jayden versus May. Okay. And I don't know where May is on the QB rankings. I assume it's way lower.
It's 30.
Oh God, if we're just going for value, I'm doing May.
Yeah,
that certainly makes sense.
100%.
Now, D-Bro, in terms of the rushing value, I mean, I'm not saying like Justin Fields level like we saw a couple years ago where it just kind of exploded out of the gate. But that rushing equity, especially rushing touchdown equity, that is a huge difference maker. And if Caleb should struggle at all potentially with some of the new surroundings or, struggling to any sort of adaptation to the NFL, which again, we could talk about that. There will be adversity. Every rookie has that. But is there a script you can write here where Jayden Daniels in Superflex is the better value because of that rushing equity in terms of what he is going off currently at ADP?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to shade Caleb at all as far as like talent and the ability and the upside and stuff. I think that he is perfectly a high upside play for this fantasy season, but I'll push back against Brett. I love you, man, but for me, it's Jayden Daniels. And a lot of this is the rushing ability, and what we've seen over the last few years. Like even when people were out in the streets and saying, "Look, Justin Fields is terrible. He can't throw the ball. He can't do anything." QB5, QB9 in fantasy points per game over the last 2 years, and so I think Jayden Daniels carries a higher ceiling based off of his rushing alone. Because Brett, we got to talk about this off air, or we could just have the conversation here. I do have some worries about that Chicago Bears offensive line. Like the skill players are really freaking good. Mm-hmm. I will not debate that at all. They are. They set Caleb up to succeed as far as that goes. I'm still worried about their center. I'm still worried about Nate Davis. I'm worried about interior pressure and whether, we can match up like edge rushers and just the ability to bring pressure in that division, much less their schedule. But I think Caleb still carries the upside, but I'm going with Jayden here. I think the other thing about this marriage with Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury, it's lockstep in terms of how this offense is going to function. At the height of Cliff's powers with Kyler Murray, and we saw them putting up a ton of points, 2020 and 2021, it relied upon play action and deep passing. Jayden Daniels, by every single metric, was top 3 in the nation in deep ball passing. I think that's real. I'm not saying he has a howitzer, but his ball placement on deep throws is the chef's kiss. So marrying that with this offense, Terry McLaurin getting him downfield, I think is going to be a perfect marriage, as well as then we add the rushing equity on top of that. I love Jayden Daniels. Like I've got him ranked as a top 10 QB in fantasy right now for this upcoming season. Maybe I'm out over my skis and Brett needs to pull me back a little bit, but that's where I sit with Daniels.
That's the fun of the conversation now. One guy who has smash potential. Go ahead, Brett.
Please push back, Brett. I need this in my life.
I just want to preface, I like Jayden Daniels a lot as a prospect. Like I mocked him in the top 5 for a reason, right? Here's my concern. If we're talking about pressure to sack ratio, his was through the roof. The dude takes a lot of sacks because a lot of it was 1, not there, 2, not there, run. A lot of it was half field stuff. And sometimes it was even 1, not there, run. And that was kind of a big reason for a lot of his rushing production was he would take off when he absolutely should not, but he was the best athlete on the field. And so he would, quote unquote, get away with it, so to speak, and rip off these huge runs. But if you're just looking at the pure passing tape, again, the LSU offense was kind of funky. I alluded to it a lot with Malik Nabers, where they were built off of slot fades and hitches. Like slot fade, slot fade, slot fade. They would hit a crossing route every now and then. I think I saw Brian Thomas Jr. run a dig one time. That was super exciting. But like they didn't really work the middle of the field, right? And they did that because in college the hashes are wider. So when you're throwing a slot fade in college from the far hash, like you have infinite space to throw that. It's not really a tight window throw at all. And when you have 2 first-round receivers, like yeah, you're going to do that. But when you saw him go up against like a real defense stacked with like NFL talent, Florida State, and they didn't give him anything, like he struggled. Like that they got like the one big play to Brian Thomas Jr. where he just made it happen after the catch before. Like they had a busted coverage and he just made it happen. But like up until that point, it's like, yeah, he got that points, but he was down by 20 in the fourth quarter. Like when he went up against like a real NFL defense loaded with NFL talent, and he had NFL talent in his own right. He had a top 10 left tackle. He had 2 first-round receivers. It didn't look good. Didn't really work the middle of the field at all this year. Like he did it a few times, but not nearly enough to make me think like, okay, when they start playing cover 2, when they start playing quarter half and putting a cap over those fades, can he then take advantage of that and work the middle of the field? I'm not ready to say yes to that, and that scares the hell out of me. So I get it. He's going to run. He's going to get rushing production. But he's doing it against way better athletes now. And I don't think he's the same caliber of athlete of Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson. So I'm not like completely saying, yes, this is still going to work. And I don't think I don't think the system at LSU did him as many favors in his development as people think it did. So I'm really worried because I compare that to Drake May, who did work the middle of the field and worked it really well. I compare it to Caleb, who did work the middle of the field, worked it really well. You can't just take away fades from those guys and expect to profit. So I like Jayden a lot. Again, I had him as a top 5 pick, but he scares me.
Did you have May ahead of him, Brett? The way you're talking? Why?
I did.
Just out of curiosity, why is that?
Because really the only problem with May was footwork, like consistency of footwork. If we're talking about, his ability to stay lined up and just have a repeatable throwing motion, both with the lower half and the upper half. Like he didn't really do a good job of making his throwing motion repeatable, which is what led to his accuracy issues. But when he did it, like when he was like back foot in the ground, front foot in the ground, like we're ripping it. Everything's lined up. Everything's mechanically sound. Like he was incredibly accurate. And again, as a young player, he started for, I think it was 2 years, maybe slightly less than 2 years. And I think if we saw Drake May play the same amount in college that we saw Jayden Daniels did and have those 2 extra years to develop and clean up the footwork, I don't think we would have any question who the better prospect is. Because if you look at Jayden Daniels 2 years ago, which is where Drake May is now, is like not even close. Not even close. Agreed. So,
but doesn't the competition level of May factor into that evaluation too a little bit for you? Like, does he not
in
get?
What way?
Well, in the sense of, I guess
he also didn't have really anybody to work with.
That's also fair. That is also fair.
Yeah.
The same.
And when your leading guy is Tez Walker, that's probably not great.
And I'll tell you what, 3 of his picks.
I don't want Tez Walker catching strays here, but it's just a reality.
Oh, I'll throw strays. 3 of May's picks were because of Tez.
Well, I've been saying
you
for
said
years.
it, not me. I was going to go there, but I didn't go there.
I don't know why we don't have an official score for football like we do for baseball, where there's obviously, you hit a guy right between the numbers and it bounces off of him and somebody picks it off. Why is that not an interception on the receiver? I'll never know.
Interceptions need context, and they never get it. Just going to throw that out there. But not always on the quarterback.
Again, great stuff. Great conversation about these 2 QBs, and obviously in Superflex leagues, people will draft that upside, but we're talking about redraft here today.